Alright guys, so this time we're doing Karador Ghost Chieftain deck tech. So let me just run through this real quick. Karador is not a very unique commander. He's kind of been tossed around a lot. He was in the pre-con decks where he's from, so he's got a lot of mileage out of him. So the way that I had to build him to make him a little bit more mine and less phoned in is really what I want to highlight here. So if you don't know what Karador does, he costs one less for every creature card in your graveyard, and during your turn you can cast a creature card from your graveyard, basically as if it was in your hand. So we'll get to the stuff that I did first. Let's start off with the boring stuff. We'll run through it real quick. The lands. So High Market sacrifices a creature. I mean, it's just good in a deck you're trying to fill up the graveyard. We got a couple of weird lands. Vivid Lands, Bajuka Bog, Tranquil Thicket, these cycling lands, Slippery Karst, and Secluded Steppe. They're all good in a deck like this for Life in the Loam, which we do have in the deck. We'll get to that in a minute. Mosswort Bridge, a lot of our guys are huge. They're just massive creatures. So getting 10 power to use the card underneath Mosswort Bridge, it'll be easy to do. Plus the fact that it helps us cheat more big fatties into play. Really, I have a tapped land that gains us some life here. Some of the lands that come into play if you control land of each type. These really are suboptimal. They're just lands that I have in the deck. I didn't really want to... I built this deck mostly with the creature base in mind. It kind of just had a lot of the other cards. So I had a Grasslands, I had a Temple Garden, I had a Verdant Catacombs, Overgrown Tomb, Godless Shrine, all that type of stuff. I had that already. So I can just throw that in there. You can feel free to insert any amount of lands that you feel like. So this is the most controversial part of the entire deck. How many basics I run. So I run a total of 10 basic lands here. Mostly black, and then we have like a white right about there. Black and green. Those are the main colors of this deck here. These are important. I'm going to leave them right up here for us. I'll come back to those in a second. So I have all three of the bounce lands in our colors here. They come to play tapped. They return a land to your hand, but they tap for 2 mana. I really like these crew lands. They're good. I enjoy using them, and like I said, I had them. Same with the Llanowar Waste and these 5-color lands. Ancient Ziggurat, Reflecting Pool, Command Tower, blah blah blah. All the stuff you've already seen before in other 3-color decks. Some temples, some more lands that suck, and then we have our triple color land in our colors. Temple of the False God, we're gonna need a lot of colors, and then the scrying lands here. These help us with their top deck fixing. And sometimes you're going to get into a scenario where that's important, but like I said, most of the time they're suboptimal. Let me get to the stuff that I really want to talk about. Life in the Loam. This is the reason... Let me just stop and explain for a minute how I make decks. It might not have been apparent if you watched the 5-color angel video how exactly I work, but I like to make decks with a theme around them, or some type of point that they're getting at, and then build that around it, and then all the other cards kind of fall into place. I wanted to build a Dredge deck. I wanted to build a deck that was like a vintage Dredge deck in Commander, but not necessarily explosive. I wanted to do something that was powerful, and one card could turn the face of the entire game, but I didn't want to win on turn 2. I wanted to let the game roll out for a little bit, give everybody something to do, and then win automatically. Just win out of nowhere. But I wanted that to take a while, so Dredge was perfect. Life in the Loam, if you don't know what it does, it dredges for 3, and if you don't know what the Dredge mechanic does, whenever you would draw a card, you dredge 3, so it'd be, you take the top 3 cards from the top of your library, put them into your graveyard, and instead draw this card instead of whatever you're going to draw. So these are really good with those cycle lands I was telling you about, because you discard them, instead of drawing, you dredge them, return them to your hand, it's like engine, you just keep going, throwing a whole bunch of stuff in your graveyard. Stinkweed has dredge 5, which is nuts, and he also has pseudo death touch. It's not really the keyword. This little Nyxweaver guy here throws cards in our yard. What more could you ask for? Golgari Thug has Dredge 4 and also returns creatures to the top of our library if we need to. Sometimes we need to. Wayfinder, you need a lot of lands in this deck to get a lot of the stuff what we're doing, and you're not going to be taking creatures out of the graveyard almost ever. It's really a one specific time you're going to do that, and that's when you do like one of these mass reanimation spells we'll get to later. For the most part, 1 to 2 reanimations isn't good enough. So we're going to mostly toss everything that's not a land. So we have a lot of things to search for lands. Grizzly Salvage, put the top 5 cards of your library into the graveyard, put a creature or a land, you always put a land. Greater Good's ridiculous. You sack a creature, draw cards equal to the creature's power, then discard 3. Most of the time we do this for 1/1s, 2/2s, anything, just to throw our hand in the graveyard, just to go crazy. Golgari Grave Troll is the reason this deck can work. It's a Dredge 6, it's just nuts. He also gets massive if we ever need to play him. This is a new card from Eldritch Moon. It does basically the same thing as our Grizzly Salvage, but only for 3. Mulch. It's 4 cards. You get any number of lands that hits. Fantastic. Mills the top 3 cards when it comes into play. So this isn't really a mill card as much as it is a sack draw cards. But most of the time when we sack a huge fatty, we'll be milling ourselves, discarding out of our maximum hand size. And plus, the draw on the sacrifice is good. Commune with the Gods gives us a creature or an enchantment. Top 5 cards for 2 mana. And normally we're going to choose an enchantment if we can get that. But sometimes we do get stuck with a creature, but that's the cost of what you're using. This is the reason that these are so controversial. You'll notice that a lot of spike players will play Hermit Druid. If you don't know what Hermit, I should guess. Alright, well, let me just explain what Hermit Druid does. So he's a 1/1 for 2. You tap a green, you tap him. You put the top card of your library into the graveyard until you reveal a basic land card. Put that card into your hand and the rest in the graveyard. So a lot of spiky players, people that want to win games really hard and fast, will run decks with none of these, or 2 of these, or 1 of these, or whatever it is. So that when they activate Hermit Druid, they just flip their entire deck over into their graveyard, combo off, win the game immediately. Like I said, I wanted to do strong plays, but I didn't want to win the game on real early turns. So what I did was I chose a pretty decent amount of basic lands, so that when I tapped Hermit Druid, he still flipped a whole bunch of cards over, but he didn't go infinite and win the game immediately. So I chose 10 purposefully, so that Hermit Druid is still really good, it's just not immediate win type scenarios. So let's move on to the tutor effects that I run. So, Corpse Connoisseur is 4 and a black. It's an entomb on a body. That's all it is. You get to put it in your graveyard, any creature, the card that you want to look for, and then he has an Earth too, which he can come back with haste and then get exiled. Buried Alive, he put 3 creature cards into your graveyard for 3. That's ridiculous. Birthing Pod, too good for Modern, but perfectly good for Commander. It's just, I don't really consider it a tutor, I guess, but it just finds you up the chain that you need to go. Normally, we have enough of a spread where you can hit almost everything every single time. There's not too many times you'll be a dead draw with that. Tirade's Orders is awesome. It's a demonic tutor and an entomb on the same card. What more could you want? Diabolic Intent is a demonic tutor, except you have to sacrifice a creature, which is an upside in this deck, so it's basically better. And then Entomb, it's Entomb. You get a card into your graveyard. For 1 mana, instant speed, it's exactly what we wanted to do. So I've been talking about how we're going to fill up the graveyard, how are we going to get everything out of it, right? So we got Burial Rites. You get 2. Sometimes when you have some utility cards in the graveyard, you just need 1 and you don't have the other ways to really remove everything at the same time. So you need that. Victimize gets 2 cards and sacrifices a creature. You sacrifice a little creature, get 2 big ones back, or it sets you up for some pretty sick turns later. Living End. So this is one of those mass reanimation cards I was talking about. This one does have suspense, so it's a little bit slower, and they can usually see it coming because there's no way to cascade into it. So this one's not as good as the other ones. But it is another effect. It's redundant. We need it. It makes everybody sacrifice their creatures, and then put them aside, take all the creatures that are in the graveyard, put them into play, and then put those cards you set aside into the graveyard. It basically takes the graveyard in the battlefield and flips them. So normally, because we'll have nothing on our board, or at least crappy things on our board, we'll flip the whole deck over and have a stupid board state and nobody else will. Animate Dead, like I said, sometimes you just need that Restock gets cards that all the time aren't creatures. I don't know why I didn't think that. It never hits creatures. We always just run instant sorceries, anything we mill that we actually do need, that we can't interact with as much. Magister Worth is a little bit of a fun card. In a 1v1 setting, she's got Will of the Council, and she causes a vote, and if you get the votes tied, then you wipe the board except for her. And if you get more votes for the Grace side, you reanimate everyone's creatures into play. So you either Wrath the board except her or reanimate everything. But in a 1-player game, it's just a Wrath, which is normally pretty good. In a 4-player game, this becomes pretty fun. So we can normally leverage that to get some pretty sick plays in. Exhume, everybody gets some stuff, but we get a better one. Twilight's Call, it can be an instant speed revive everything. It's everybody, but our board is going to be nuts when we do that. So it already costs 6, but if you go ahead and give it the good old 8, then you can get that at instant speed. Pyrrhic Revival brings back each creature except with a -1/-1 counter on it. Some decks, this actually kills all their creatures they reanimated, like elves. Like you'd expect elves to be really good when you reanimate their entire board, but they'll actually just die most times. So cards like that are really good, and they don't really hinder us too much. Living Death, the original, the best. It just does the thing for 5 mana. It's exactly what we want it to do. So Portugal, I don't know how to say that. If you guys know, just tell me. But he's a 5/4, and he takes a card from everybody's graveyard. Takes a creature card from all of them and reanimates them into our board. Late game, this can be ridiculous. You're going to steal the best creature from everybody in their graveyards. It's just good. Karmic Guide is a creature, bonus, kills herself, bonus, and gets a creature to play. I mean, we can go infinite with this, and we can also do a lot of really cool stuff. Dead Bridge Chant. This card's insane. When it comes in the battlefield, you mill 10. So you're already filling up your graveyard. And then your upkeep, you choose a random card and get that card. If it's a creature, it goes right into play. If it's not, it goes into your hand. So this card can be pretty unreliable, but the fact that it mills 10 is almost good enough. So let's just move right on to the things we want to be reanimating. So, Angel of Serenity has a couple different purposes. She can exile cards that you're having trouble dealing with. She can exile cards in your graveyard if you single target use her to get them back into your hand that you need. She can do a lot of really cool stuff. A tournament, this gets back cards that we didn't want to mill. Like I said, sometimes we mill cards that we weren't really looking forward to, like instant sorcery, stuff like that. Woodfall Primus, I'm going to leave him right up here. We're going to come back to him. If you don't know what he does, for 8 mana, is a 6/6 trample. When he comes into play, you destroy a non-creature permanent, and he has Persist, which means he comes back with a -1/-1 counter. But we'll leave him right up here, because I have a feeling we're going to need him. Teneb, he's a reanimate on a body. He is also a 6/6 flyer. He can end games pretty quick. He's just a really strong presence on the board that can also, really work well with our strategy. Shriek Maw is a removal spell that's on a body. We can keep recurring. Splinter Fright can get massive because his power and toughness is equal to how many creature cards are in my graveyard. He has trample already, and then he mills too in my upkeep. So he can keep growing. He helps us with the mill theme. Tilling Tree Folk, we mill a lot of those land cards. We really need to hit our lands. This helps us do that. It's almost like a little mini Life in the Loam. Micaeus, one of the reasons that this other card was so good. Micaeus the Unhallowed goes infinite in 1,000 different ways. He gives all my creatures Undying. And the way Undying and Persist work is infinite. So if we have a sack outlet, any one of them in the deck, then this can go infinite. You just keep sacking it, he comes back, he has Undying, +1/-1 counters cancel out, then he can just keep going there until nobody has any lands or any other non-creature permanents into play. It's just, you have so many different ways to make Micaeus go infinite. He's a really important combo piece. I'm also going to leave him up here because he's going to be useful again in a little bit. Acidic Slime, it blows up any permanent you're having trouble with, except for creatures, of course. But you have other ways to deal with that. He's a poster child for all the green decks that ever use a graveyard, even non-ones. Bane of Progress, a lot of people are running artifact decks, a lot of people are running enchantment decks in Commander. This hoses all of them. We run almost no artifacts and like 2 enchantments, so this doesn't really hurt us all that much. He's just a strong guy. Speaking of artifacts, one of the only ones we run, Solemn Simulacrum. He's a great card in a reanimator deck. If you recur Solemn 3 or 4 times, you basically get so far ahead that nobody can catch up with you. So just keep that in mind when you're running any type of graveyard or blink or anything, really. Ashen Rider. This card's insane. Exile target permanent is one of my favorite possible phrases. Anytime I see that, I get a little giddy inside. Brings out my white-black self. He is also a 5/5 flyer, and we don't even need to worry. I'm not even going to pretend. Just pretend like this part of the card doesn't exist, because basically in this deck it doesn't. If you ever cast that card, I'm surprised. We have a big game hunter here. He's got badness. Madness sucks so much. I hate it. When he comes into play, you get a reprisal out of it. You get your 4 or greater card, can't be regenerated, murdered. So he's just another one of those cards in Commander that downside really doesn't even exist, except for utility creatures, which will normally be dead anyway. Shadowborn Demon here. It's a 5/6. He causes sacrifice if you have 7 or less cards in your graveyard. And he comes into play and blows up a non-demon. Non-demon has burnt me before, but not most of the time. Is that all that relevant? The free sack outlet in the early game is great. When you reanimate him early, or if this is one of the cards that you do sometimes hard cast, the fact that he can get other creatures in the graveyard for you is pretty good. And then he just sticks around once you've got your game plan on lock. Wood Elves gets a forest right into play, not a basic forest. Sacred Tribelder, you already know what he does. He goes into the graveyard by himself. So this is a proxy. This should be Spore Frog. If you don't know what Spore Frog does, it's a 1/1 for 1 green that prevents all combat damage that fogs by sacking itself. Some decks can't beat that. If you keep that on the board every turn with Karador, you just fog, play him, fog, play him. You really can't lose that game. Some decks just can't beat you with any other way. Shieldred, her text is gross. So she's a 6/6 with Swamp Walk, which matters, a fair amount of time. At the beginning of my upkeep, I get a guy back, and at the beginning of each other opponent's turns, they lose a guy. So basically, the board gets tilted in your favor every time the board swings around. And normally, if you have a whole bunch of cards in your graveyard and you have her in here, you reanimate her first, and she follows all the other ones. It's really great. Sun Titan, same type of deal with Shieldred, except for only with permanence, with mana cost 3 or less. Like I was just saying, lands are actual targets for this, so you can get those back. That's great. As well as a lot of the utility creatures. Unfortunately, it's 3 or less. You can't get Solemn, which would have been ridiculous. Sunblast Angel is a board wipe. It keeps people honest, keeps people scared of what you might do. If you have her in your graveyard, not too many people are going to alpha swing unless they think you'd kill you in 1 turn. Helps a little bit of a deterrent. I used to keep her on top of my graveyard, just so everyone knows what I got. Archetype of Endurance gives all of your stuff hexproof, takes away hexproof from everything else. They can't gain it. This is basically just a way to deal with other hexproof guys that other people have, because it takes it away, but also helps once we've got like a few key pieces on the board. Knight of the Reliquary gets stuff into your graveyard, gets huge for when those lands are in your graveyard. It's just a really solid creature. If you're playing green-white and you're not running them, I don't know what you're doing. Oracle Moldai is one of the best cards ever printed. You play the top card of your library revealed, which is important, because you get to scry and do a lot of stuff with that. Top deck manipulation in this deck, especially with milling your cards out. You can play the top card if it's a land, and you can play an additional land every turn. Helps you with that ramp thing, goes crazy with Life in the Loam. Runescarred Demon, what more could you ask for but a Demonic Tutor on a 6/6 flyer? It's great. Fauna Shaman's just nuts. Survival of the Fittest is this kind of effect here, but it's on an enchantment and doesn't cost a mana and a tap to use. So this is a basically worse Survival of the Fittest, but because it's on a creature, it's actually just about as good for us. You get to discard a creature card from your hand and get a creature card from your deck and put it into your hand. It's just, it's gross. Vindicate on the body with an Angel of Despair. Let's flip this back here. And then you got a Naturalize on a body with the Reclamation Sage. Basically anything on a body is better than the spell version in this type of deck. So let's go to some of the bigger creatures we're looking to win with. Lord of Extinction. His power and toughness are equal to all cards in all graveyards. Not creatures, all cards in everybody's graveyard. This card can get up to 50 easily. What do you do once you have a 50? Even though he looks like he's flying, he's actually not. He's straight up on the ground. Well, you play Gerard, Gargari Lichlord. Aside from being huge himself and also being recurable by sacrificing those lands that we have a lot of, he can pay 3, sacrifice a creature, and fling it at people. And it's not one person, it's every person. And so you can see when you mass reanimate and you get a whole bunch of these into play, you just throw that at everybody, and as well as your entire other board, and you win the game. That's one way to do it. One way to get an instant board sweep is to play this little combo here. So Vishkal can sacrifice creatures to put +1/+1 counters on them, and then remove -1/-1 counters, or remove all the counters from them, and give something -1/-1. These interact infinitely. Same thing, he always comes in with 1 counter. You remove the counter from him to give something -1, and you keep doing that until everybody's creatures are dead off the board. Then if you have any of the other types of effects with persist, you can just kind of just stack them all over the crap, and then they don't have any non-land permanents, all their creatures are dead. Most people just concede, which is the smart thing to do, because you're not going to win. I only run 1 board wipe, which is Wrath of God, because all of the Reanimator effects are basically board wipes. A lot of them involving everyone sacrificing all their creatures, and if a board state's pretty nuts, and then you Wrath of God, and the next turn you Living Death, it's actually kind of bad. So I only run the 1 simply because other effects do better. And here are some of those other effects. The targeted removal. Now, I don't know if you guys are catching on here, but I really like targeted removal. I put a lot of it in my deck. Okay, I'll just go through it. Anguished Unmaking is one of my favorite cards. It's the best removal spell in Magic currently, in my opinion. Exile target non-land permanent, you lose 3 life, instant speed. If you can run these colors, then run it. It's just really, really good. Beast Within deals with any permanent, gets a 3/3. Like I said, with the sacrificing and all that type of stuff, this 3/3 being a token actually matters. Pernicious Deed, I didn't include this in the board wipe section because it's not strictly speaking a board wipe, because it doesn't hit everything unless you pay a lot of mana. And most of the time we're not doing it to board wipe the board. We're using it strategically to hit a few different mana costs. So you can just pay whatever, sack it, and it destroys all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments with that mana cost or less. Mortify hits an enchantment or a creature. Putrefy hits an artifact or a creature. And then Swords hits a creature, and they gain life equal to that creature's toughness. So that's the deck. The idea of the deck is to just flop over a whole bunch of cards, mass reanimate them, get them into play, have a stupid amount of triggers, and you just go off. Quick couple things to watch out for if you're playing this type of deck. Torpor Orb ruins your life, because all of your stuff really needs to enter the battlefield and do a thing. Obviously, Graveyard Hate is an issue, so you don't want to go too thick, right? If you're going in against somebody you know who has Graveyard Hate, you don't want to flip over 10, 15, 20 cards in your graveyard and then just like run them into an exile effect. You want to just kind of be more strategic with it, which is another reason why those little tiny spot reanimate spells are in there. That's for that type of game. When you're going back and forth at it, you can't really just dump your whole place into the graveyard and then just flop them all into play like big fatties. That's really where those are gonna shine. You're gonna see those better. Plus, Karador allows you to play your guys automatically anyway, so just keep that in mind. You don't need to ever have to worry about the commander tax either with this Karador guy. He costs 1 colorless less for every creature card in your graveyard. That scales up. Once you got 5, he only costs the colors, and then if he dies, that's fine. You mill a couple cards, and then you're back to the same 3 colors again. So this guy is really resilient of a threat. He really can never go away now that they changed the tuck rule even. So he's just always going to be there. So filling up your graveyard is almost always the best way to go. Plus this deck plays with so many options. Each one of these cards has 1,000 different options. This deck will take you a very long time to master. It takes a very cerebral kind of gameplay, and it does things very slowly. So decks that are faster than you will often give you trouble. because it takes a second for your deck to get online, and I did that purposefully so that you could make really big explosive plays like reanimating 30 creatures all at once and destroying everybody's lands and stuff like that. But it took long enough to where everybody else got to do their thing. Everybody got to play the game. They don't feel cheated once you've done that because the game went on for like 10 or whatever turns. So it's a casual deck, but it's purposefully, so you can easily change 6 to 7 cards in this deck and make it into a really competitive deck, rework the land base, and you'd be all set. I mean, that's just one of the things that is really, really good about Karador, is you can structure him for your power levels of your meta and play group. And he has 1,000 different permutations that he could be used in. He is kind of a vanilla general, though, and that's why I don't play him all that often. But, you know, that's pretty much it. That's all I got for this. So if you guys have any comments, questions, suggestions, stuff you think I should have put in the deck that I didn't, things, hey, you're an idiot, you did put this in, let's go ahead and leave it down below. Alright, well, that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.